Hey, everybody, I'm Bill. I'm an alcoholic. How long do I speak for, Glenn?
You have until the top of the hour.
Okay. It's good to be here for the second time to see if we can't finish this thing off. I have to always remember my opinions from one time to the next so I can have a common thread. What I really like to talk about more than anything, I get sometimes tired of hearing my own story, but what I really like to talk about is the spiritual condition. It says in our book, in the 10th step, that the only thing that's going to save us, the only thing that's going to keep us sober and give us a reasonable quality of life, maybe some intimacy in our relationships, a focus, a purpose, is the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So when I got to AA, I didn't have a spiritual condition. So I guess my first job in Alcoholics Anonymous is to get one of those so that I can then maintain it. And it also says in that paragraph that I'm going to rest on these things called laurels, and I shouldn't do that. And what is a laurel? A laurel is a past achievement. I didn't have any past achievements. So evidently, while I'm gathering together this spiritual condition, I've got to get some laurels. I got to get some achievements so that I can then rest on them and find out why that's not a good idea. And so when the pandemic hit, interesting thing, just before the pandemic, the last trip I took before the whole world shut down was I flew from LA, I'm in Los Angeles, flew from LA up to Sonoma, up to wine country, to go speak at a men's banquet. And this guy picked me up at the airport, and he's around my age, older guy, and you could tell by just his demeanor that he'd been around AA a long time. Very relaxed, very pleasant guy. And he's driving me to this event, which is a bit of a drive. And so we're talking. And he asked me how long I'd been sober. And I told him 30 some years. And he said, well, I almost had 30 years. So you knew it was going to be an interesting discussion. And so he told the story. He told the story. This is a relatively common story in AA. He'd been sober a long time, and met his wife in Alcoholics Anonymous. They got married, and he's coming up on retirement, and life is pretty good, and he's resting on his laurels. He's just kind of coasting along. He's still going to meetings, hanging out with his buddies and stuff. He's not like totally disappeared, but he's just kind of laid back, And he got injured or he had some surgery of some kind, and they gave him some pain medication. And on a given day, he took a couple of extra, and then pretty soon he's drinking. And this really got my attention, man. It was like listening to me, it was like there was a lack of drama. He just told the story, right? And at the time he's telling me this story, he's a couple of years sober again, and he's got a commitment. He's driving the speaker around, he's involved now. He's creating new laurels. He's got a job in AA, and he drives me to the banquet. That night we sat at the table together. He was my host, and we talked more. And it just really got my attention. It really kind of woke me up. And when I got back to LA, I called my sponsor, and my sobriety date is March the 27th, 1985. I'm 38 years sober. I don't know about you, but that impresses the hell out of me. I mean, that's a remarkable length of time. I don't think any of us ever planned to be around that long, And how do you get to be an old timer? Well, you don't drink and you don't die. That seems to be the common thing here. So I called my sponsor that I've had this whole time. Him and I both joke about the fact that the relationship we have is the longest relationship either one of us has ever had, which is kind of sad in one respect. But I called him and I said, Jay, how come you and I are still around? Why wasn't I that guy? And I can look back over the time I've been sober, and I had a couple of close calls, life happens. Maybe we'll talk about some of that. And his answer was interesting to me. He said, You and I have never lost our enthusiasm for it. He didn't say it's because we work the steps correctly. Here he is calling me right now. So I can't answer. My sponsor's calling me. I don't think we want to have this conversation with you, but speak of the devil, isn't that weird? I'm sitting here talking about him and he's on the phone. Yesterday was his birthday. He's 43 years sober, I think. So anyway, he said we never lost our enthusiasm, and I thought, isn't that interesting? Because that's true. When I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was 37 years old. It was on my second marriage, and I had a second set of 2 children. My daughter was 3 years old, and my son was 4 months old. He was born on Christmas Day of '84. And so I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm 37, and on a good day, I probably had the emotional development of a very disturbed 16-year-old, and I look like I'm grown up, but I'm not. I mean, I drank through puberty. I drank through all of that, and all the lessons that were being handed out, I missed them. I was medicated, and I was in the room, but I wasn't present. You ever been like that? You see parts of your life like that? You were actually in places, and it seems like you did some things, but it's all kind of vague and hazy. That was me. And so what's happened to me in Alcoholics Anonymous is I've grown up. But 2 things that happened when I first walked into AA, there's 2 things that are just pure luck that I'm so grateful for. And the first one's probably the most important. I just liked it right away. Not everybody's story. I walked into that first meeting after coming out of a recovery place for a month where they dried me out. And I knew I was going to drink again, and I really didn't want to, but I just knew I always had before. This is the longest I'd been sober in a long, long time. A whole month is a long time, and I don't know about you if you can remember that, but I was awkward everywhere I was. They had taken away my medication, and I'm totally self-centered, and I have no idea the depth of that self-centeredness. Everything's personal, everything's happening to me, and I'm uncomfortable. And I walked into that meeting. It was a Friday night in Hermosa Beach, California. It was a meeting called the Gong Show at the Hermosa Beach Alano Club. And it's Friday night, in just beginning summer, springtime, and everybody's dressed up trying to hook up. This is not what I was expecting. All the Harleys were parked out front, which was kind of intriguing to me. I wasn't expecting that. And I walked in there, the room was full. Who knew that an AA meeting would be full on a Friday night? Why would it be full? Why aren't there just like 10 people hanging around holding each other, not drinking, right? It was full, and it was raucous. The nicknames are flying around. One of their buddies got up to the podium to share, and they hooted so much he just sat back down. He couldn't get anything out. It was just a riot. And I stood in the back of the room, and I didn't feel part of, because I didn't know anybody. But I started laughing. I got the joke right away. I heard the music right away. And in hindsight, that's how I describe it. At the time, I just got carried away by the energy of it, and I started laughing. That's one of the ways you catch alcoholism. If you get the humor around here, you're probably an alcoholic, because we laugh at the tragedies and we cry at the successes. Everything's kind of reversed. It's an odd place, and the music is different. The music is strange. And if you relate to it, if you get it, that's a synergy. That's a connection. And that's what happened to me that night. I started laughing, and I drove home after that, and I said to myself, I think out loud, but I'm not sure. But I remember clearly thinking, this may not be so bad. These clearly are my people. I mean, we're the partiers that didn't die. I mean, it's a weird place. It's a strange place. 38 years later, I still find you deliciously strange, really interesting, weird, and I'm an old hippie from the 60s. Weird has always attracted me. And I just find you remarkably odd, and I relate to that. And you seem to relate to me. Not everybody, but a lot of people. You get it. I'll say something inappropriate and you laugh. You know, I mean, one of the things that you and I are capable of doing is when one of us is in the hospital or having some kind of tragedy, we can walk into the room and say inappropriate stuff that you will laugh at because you get the joke. The family can't say this stuff, but we can. 6 years ago, I had a liver transplant. I almost died at 30 some years sober. I was sick for a long time. People were coming to say goodbye to me, and I got lucky and I got a liver. And you would walk into that hospital room and just make death jokes and stuff like that, you know, and I'd start laughing, and my family's in there just appalled. You know, it's like, but we get it, don't we? We can bring light into a dark room. We have that capability. I've done that for people, and when it was my turn, you did it for me. That's love. That's love. That's the love in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I've never lost my enthusiasm for it. The second thing that happened that was just pure luck was after a couple of weeks of banging around going to meetings, because the next night I went back down there just to find out what the hell's going on, what kind of party is going to be happening tonight. You know, I just was intrigued to hear the stories, you know. Remember when you were new and you came into a room and somebody was sharing from the podium and they told some stuff that they shouldn't tell? And how appalled, you know, wasn't that weird? People, why are they saying this? Nobody would know. Why are they saying this out loud? But they have nothing to protect, nothing to defend anymore, you know, because that's not who they are anymore. But you don't know that when you're new. The people are confessing stuff that they shouldn't confess, you know. I was moved by that. I mean, it realized that these people are serious about this. But the second thing that happened that was pure luck is I asked this guy to help me, and he did, which doesn't always happen. He said to me that first night when I asked him to be my sponsor, because you talk about we need one of these sponsor things, right? So I asked this guy, and he said to me, go home and read the doctor's opinion. Make notes in the margin of what you agree with and what you don't. Be at my house Thursday at 5 o'clock and we'll discuss it. And for some odd reason, I just did what he told me to do. And I think what the bottom is the collapse of the ego, isn't it? It's the collapse of the alibi system. For some reason, we just quit making excuses. We just give it up. I think a lot of us get sober. We just fall over from the sheer exhaustion of the lifestyle. You know, it's exhausting being us, man. It's exhausting staying loaded all the time and making up stories and lying and defending and protecting all that shit that goes on, you know, and your life gets small, doesn't it? You know, I'm an extrovert. I'm a bar drinker. I'm a party kind of guy. You know, I mean, I'm never going to be the demure guy sitting over in the corner while everybody else dances. And I ended up alone. Isn't that interesting how we end up alone? You know? All alone. Nobody's coming to my door, knocking on my door saying, can Billy come out and play? You know, I mean, I'm sitting drinking alone. And so I went home and I read my assignment and I made my little notes in the margin and I showed up at this stranger's house. I don't think I knew his last name. And he did a real intimate thing with me, invited me into his home, and he sat down alone with me, just the two of us in his living room down by the beach. And he didn't trust me that I'd read it, and he had me sit there and read it to him out loud. Now, that man and I, we have done workshops and conferences and conventions and retreats over a good part of the world over the years. Who knew that was going to happen? Who knew? I couldn't have ever predicted anything like that. Nobody was interested in what I had to say. So, rule number one when you're sponsoring people, we've done a lot of sponsorship workshops and talking about our relationship, basically, you know. Rule number one is make sure they read the book. Don't trust them. Read it with them. It'll probably help you out. You know, 38 years later, if I have to read War Fever Ran High in That New England Town one more goddamn time, I think I'm going to blow my head off. And now I'm doing it on Zoom in Moscow. You know, who knew that was going to happen, you know? Whatever conversation is supposed to come up between the two of you will happen in the course of reading that book. All the conversation will happen. You don't have to worry about what you're going to talk about, you know? You get over the idea that you're going to run their lives for them. That doesn't work. Nobody likes that. Nobody wants to have their life run for them. Some people do. Some people thrive in that kind of an environment, you know. But goddamn, I'm a newcomer in Alcoholics Anonymous. I need some good advice. You know, I need somebody to help me navigate life. I don't know how to do this. One thing he told me in those early days, he said, my job as your sponsor is to guide you through the process of the 12 steps. I would be happy to sit here and listen to you tell me what you think your problems are so that you will not share about them in the meetings. The meetings are for recovery from alcoholism, not about how your day went. And I told him, I said, you know, down there at that Alano Club, they are breaking that rule right and left. Should we go tell them? He said, no, he says, AA is a safe place. You can pretty much do anything you want. They can't kick you out, really. He said, I'm just describing to you my Alcoholics Anonymous, what he believed in. So another fortunate thing, I ran into somebody that doesn't believe this weird thing that we say where we don't express opinions or give advice. I don't know who made that up, but if we didn't do those two things, we wouldn't have much to say to each other, would we? You know, and I'm new. I need some good advice. I need some guidance. I need somebody to help me navigate the world because I'm not handling things well. So each week I went back to this guy's house and we read another chapter in the book. And at 6 months sober, I did a 5th step. And I had one of those experiences that we have around here. He told me, he says, when you go home after reading this 5th step, after doing this, when you stick the key in the front door of your house, think about the guy that walked through that door 6 months ago compared to the guy that's walking through that door today. Think about that. And I did that. And I had an experience. And what the experience was is as I stood there at my front door, I thought, my God, it's going to be like this now. Evidently, the old life is over, whatever that was. What a remarkable thing. Isn't that something? You stop and think about that. You don't need to believe in God to have that experience. Just the actual experience of having your life changed. Now, some years ago in my spiritual journey, I was sitting with this pretty big time Indian guru, and I was really impressed to be sitting with this guy. And I get nervous. It was me and my friend that was linked to this man, and he had just given a talk, and we were in this back room after his talk, just the 3 of us. And I'm talking away like I do because I'm nervous. That's what I do. I'm a talker. And he starts laughing at me. And I said, what are you laughing at? And he says, I just love you alcoholics and drug addicts. And I said, why is that? And he goes, well, the rest of them out there are trying to get awakened. You're just trying to figure out what the hell happened. You know, isn't that true? Like, what are we doing here right now? Are we really supposed to be here? I suspect so, but isn't it odd? Think of where you came from. Think where I came from. How did I end up here? Was it a decision I made? Did I read the pamphlet and make the phone call and sign up for the course? Go to school and get a little certificate and now I'm here? And it certainly wasn't that. I would have never considered getting on my knees and asking God to help me. That never, ever crossed my mind. That was never part of it. I know some people have done that. Certainly was not me. What happened to me is I was up all night one night in a long line of all-nighters. And I was sitting in my alcoholic chair. And I don't know about you, but when the sun comes up, that's not a good thing. By this time, I'm a vampire. And when the sun comes up, that's an indicator it's going to be another miserable day in a long, long line of miserable days. And my heart just sank. And my little daughter, who was 3 years old, got up and came out in the living room, and she was happy to see that Daddy was up so early in the morning. And she crawled up in my lap, and it just broke my heart. Just broke my heart. Sometimes kids can cut through that sociopathy. And so like any good gangster, I called my mom. And this is a woman that had been in Al-Anon for 30 years by this time. My dad got sober in 1954. And I grew up in AA, in one of those AA houses, and I don't recommend it. There's nothing worse than living in a house with two people with clear eyes that know exactly what's going on in your head. But my mother got there, and these people from Al-Anon, they're very organized and they're focused, right? And she got there inside of a half an hour before I changed my mind. And she checked me into a place in Costa Mesa called Starting Point. And the next morning when I woke up in that place, the obsession to drink and use had left me and it's never returned. How do you explain that? I'd always had that obsession. I'd been drinking and using since I was 15 years old. By the time I was 17, I was a bad drunk in high school. I'd already been to jail. I had a big jacket and a slouch and a sneer and a foul mouth and a bad attitude, and I carried a gun. And I'm from the mean streets of Palos Verdes. There's no gangs in Palos Verdes. Nobody was looking for me. I was a gang of one, you know. I was a wannabe tough guy, wannabe badass. My story is I was a surfer and a biker and a tough guy. And I never went to the beach. My motorcycle rarely ran, and I was afraid to fight. But I looked really good. I had a chrome Nazi helmet for a hat and a primary chain for a belt. Black greasy Levi's, big black boots with chains around them. I've got tattoos all over me, but I had a clip-on earrings. I didn't want to hurt myself. My biker nickname was Horny. I have it tattooed here on my arm, and it's misspelled. It's Horney, Horny, with an exclamation mark for emphasis, you know. That's pretty much all you need to know about me, isn't it? By the time I'm 22 years old, I was in the Oregon State Mental Institution because I needed a rest, right? I didn't go anywhere. I didn't accomplish anything. I didn't go to school. I just got loaded for 22, 23 years. That'll scar you, right? It certainly scarred me physically. I'd have been dead a long time ago if I hadn't got sober because I had bad cirrhosis. I had no idea how bad it was. I had hepatitis C. And it fucking near killed me at 30-some years sober, you know? I mean, if I hadn't got sober, I'd have been dead a long time ago. So there was, you know, some people went to college, some people accomplished some stuff, I didn't do anything. When I drink, my life stops. Everything stops. Nothing happens. I marry people because I need help getting along. It's a group effort getting me through life. You know, I'm very high maintenance. I can't take care of myself. I don't cook. I don't do shit. You know, I need a nurse. I need a caretaker. And that's the guy. That's who walked into Alcoholics Anonymous at 37 years old, that guy. Now, a lot of people you'll hear talk about we have alcoholic thinking, like there is such a thing, right? We'd like to think that's what we have. You know what the professional community says about us? They say that we are emotionally immature. And we hear that and we go, no. I have special thinking. I have alcoholic thinking that's never going away. And you need to consider that when you're dealing with me. After 38 years of relatively deep research, I have determined that me, therefore probably you, are just emotionally immature. I don't think we have special thinking. I don't think we're that unique. We love to sit in AA and talk about the earth people out there, the normies, like there's something wrong with them, right? Like we're that special. You know, I heard a guy at a meeting one time say, you know, we're not that special. We're just pigs. And I think that's true about us, you know. We have a disease. How does that affect us emotionally? Do we have special thinking? Do you think? I don't think so. You know, I sponsored God knows how many guys over the years. And mostly what we talk about is how we don't get along well. And I don't get along well. You know, I need something in me to cushion the blow of you on me. I can't do you. I need something. I don't get along. I'm angry. And I don't know that I'm full of fear. I don't know the anger is covering up fear. I just think I'm angry. I don't know this. And I've been to mental institutions. I was in group therapy for 2.5 years. I love psychotherapy. It's all about me. You want no secrets? If I run out of secrets to tell you, I'll just make some shit up just to keep the conversation going. It's that, but AA isn't psychotherapy, is it? Like you hear people in AA talk, well, I'm looking for my true self. What if there's nothing there? What if what you're looking for simply doesn't exist? What if the gurus are telling us that life is an illusion? What are they talking about? They're talking about the way we perceive the world around us. We don't see it correctly. We see it from a very self-centered position. We have no consciousness that we're all connected to each other, that we're all connected to nature itself, to everything. We don't see that. We can't see that. So we're dealing from a very, very self-centered position. And everything that's happening is happening to us. It's all very personal. And that simply isn't true. Stuff is just happening. It's not happening to us. I'm just in the room. But it's not focused on me. No one's focused on me. So what is this spiritual condition? If this whole thing is really about transformation, working the steps is not so much about getting us to not drink. That already happens when we walk in here, it doesn't it? Something touches us. When we walk in here, we're not drinking. Now, we may go back to it, but we're not drinking. We start working the steps. And working the steps is not about not drinking per se, but AA is kind of stringent about that, isn't it? There seems to be a rule, the not drinking thing. But we work the steps to change ourselves. It's about transformation. If it was about not drinking, we would come in here drinking, we would start working the steps, and somewhere around the 8th or 9th or 10th step, we'd stop drinking. But that isn't what happens, is it? Matter of fact, if we drink again, our sponsors make us start over from the beginning. It's like, I get some guys that come up to their inventory and then they drink and they come back finally and say, we're not going from the beginning. We're going to start with the inventory now. Because you see, that seems to be a barrier for you, So working the steps is about changing the problem exists in our minds, the way we perceive the world. What's a psychic change? Isn't a psychic change a perceptual change, the way we see the world, the way we see the universe? The thief thinks everyone else is a thief. That's his reality, right? The thief thinks, well, I would steal from you, therefore you'd probably steal from me. But it's not true that everybody's a thief, is it? And we look at the world through very, very self-centered eyes, like young kids do. We're like teenagers. Teenagers the reason that we have problem with children is they're more self-centered than we are. It's competition, right? But teenagers, kids are appropriately self-centered. They're supposed to be that way. It's part of the growing up process. Everyone has an ego. The ego presents itself at about 2.5 years old. As we have a term for it, we call it the terrible twos. The little kid prior to that has no conception that it's separate from anything. That hasn't entered its consciousness yet. And then somewhere around 2.5 years old, it realized when I cry, they come. And it begins to manipulate the situation. Every time it needs something, it cries because it can't survive without you, without us. We're not like little horses that just get up right away and start eating grass. It's not like that. We're totally helpless. So we need these other people around us. It is a group effort getting us through life. We are not surviving on our own. We are not an island. We would die if that was the way it was. We need people around us. And then somewhere in growing up, we lose sight of that. We don't think we're connected anymore. We think we're the subject and everything else is an object, right? That's what the ego does, is it creates separation. It's part of the human experience. It is not the enemy. It's not trying to help me, hurt me. God knows it needs me for transportation, right? So I come into Alcoholics Anonymous and this man's going to work the steps with me. And what's the very first thing he wanted to know from me when I sat down in his living room with him that day? He wanted to know whether I thought I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. Now, for me, that was an easy answer. I was beat up, and I got that. I can't do this anymore. The obsession had been lifted, and I really needed some help. And I think I was pretty conscious of that, actually. You know, I really didn't want to drink and use anymore. I was hurt emotionally and physically. So I could cop to that. Well, 38 years later, I think the concept of powerlessness has taken on a much larger meaning. I think it's everything, don't you? I think it's everything. I've lost complete control over the geopolitical situation in the world. Look at it. It's like, and nobody from Washington's calling me up asking me my opinion. 3 years ago, I shut off the TV news. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I'm just not emotionally stable enough to do it. It doesn't matter which side you're on. It's just crazy. And I don't live there. It's not where I live. I live here with you. Now, the other part of it is I talk to you incessantly about how if you were a little bit different, the two of us would be a hell of a lot happier. And you absolutely insist upon living your own life, and it pisses me off at my core. So I'm powerless over you. I can't fix you. And the way I live my life is I make you responsible for how I feel and my behavior. If you didn't act the way you acted, I wouldn't find it necessary to straighten your ass out. So when you act the way you act and I yell at you, it's because of what you've done. It's your fault. The reason I'm angry at you is because of how you behave. If you didn't behave that way, I wouldn't be angry. So you're responsible for how I feel and you're responsible for my behavior. And that doesn't work. Am I having trouble with personal relationships? Oh, you bet. I do not get along, you know. So powerless has taken on a much larger meaning. Evidently, the way I live my life is I believe that things outside myself need to be different in order for me to be okay. And they don't change, and I suffer. We talk a lot in AA about acceptance. I need to accept things. Well, if I really grasp at a visceral or gut level how powerless I am, acceptance just happens. Right? I don't go get acceptance. Acceptance happens when I really realize how powerless I am. That I can't change you. I can't change anything around me. Things are just the way they are, and I don't like the way they are. I'm looking for an alternative. And that's never going to happen. So powerlessness is the first pillar of spiritual condition. And any spiritual path that you go down, if you read the books, you go to the church, you go listen to the speakers, they all talk about this. All of them, every one of them, without exception. Personal powerlessness. We are not running the show. And we think we are. We keep trying, you know. Powerlessness is the first pillar of spiritual condition. If I can get just the drugs and alcohol part, the second step becomes operational. I need to align myself with the power. Now, there's some people that will tell you that you have to believe in God or some kind of God to do AA. That simply isn't true. All you need to know, all I need to know about God is it's not me. And there are lots of powers that are much greater than me. And AA is certainly one of those. I think Alcoholics Anonymous in and of itself is a good God. It'll work because you can look at it and see it in the room, right? You're in a room full of people, most of whom are conscious of the fact that their lives have been saved. There's an energy around that I have always been able to tap into. That's very real. You stick around here long enough and the God thing will come and visit you, and you can label it with whatever makes you feel comfortable. But you stick around here long enough and it'll knock on your door. You can do whatever you want, but it's an experience, not a concept, right? When we get into the concept world, we create a God and then don't believe in it, right? So I'd say things to my sponsor arguing about God, and he would say, Bill, I don't believe in the God you don't believe in either. Now that's confusing, isn't it? Because everybody knows what you don't believe in. Well, evidently not, you know. What is it I believe in? Well, one thing I believe in, I don't even have faith in it anymore. I believe in it because I've seen it, is Alcoholics Anonymous. I've watched it actually work. So it's transitioned from, God, I hope this works for me, I have faith, to, hell yes, it works. I've seen it. I've seen it in you, and therefore I discover it within me. So transformation does occur. Over the years, the whole God thing has changed for me somewhat, right? I'm a meditator. That brings me a lot of peace. We'll talk about that a little bit, maybe. So if I can do the second step, Bill Wilson wrote about this a lot, talking about the second step is about being open-minded. It's a logical thought progression to me. I am not running the show. That's clear. So something else must be. That's all I need to know. That's okay with me, is try to get into that kind of synergy. Then the third step happens. The third step's interesting because it says I'm going to make a decision to turn my life and will over to clearly what already has it anyway. I think it was nice of them to lead me to believe that I actually have some say in the matter, right? Well, I've been withholding myself from the totality of all things long enough. I'm going to acquiesce now and allow you to take me. Thank you very much. Where's my trophy, right? And we have these long, windy discussions about the difference between my will and God's will, as if that's possible. My little ego, the 2.5-year-old, loves the idea of us having a battle of wills with the power that drives the entire universe. How is that even possible, right? And we talk about I wonder what God's will is. That's amazing to me. God's will is what's happening right now. What else could it possibly be? And I don't like what's happening right now. I'm looking for an alternative, and there is none. This is it. It looks like this. It smells like this. This is what it is right now. And what life and will is the third step talking about? It's the inventory, isn't it? The end result of living a life with seeming power. I've got resentment, I've got fears, and I've got broken sexual relationships. That's what I bring to you. And I write that out. You have me write it out, I write it out. And I share it with you in the fifth step. And what's the lesson in the inventory process? It's the second pillar of spiritual condition. I have to stop blaming other people and institutions for my problems. High school is over. It's time for little Bill to take responsibility for his own life and stop the blaming. If it's their fault, there's no possibility of any change. If it depends upon them changing. On my first inventory was the entire federal government and specifically the Department of Motor Vehicles. Who the hell are they to tell me whether I can drive or not? I'm the rebel from the 60s, the rebel without a clue or a cause, but it's just burn down the house, burn it down, right? And I'm 37 years old, I'm still there, it's like that. I'm screaming at cops on the side of the road, and all this stuff. I have to stop the blaming. Now it's going to take a while because it's so ingrained in me, but this will open the door to where I have to stop the blaming. And now I start that process of stopping the blaming. And if you surround yourself with some relatively healthy people in AA, they will help you to try to stop it. And I mean people you're getting sober with, not just people that have been around a while. If you're getting involved with a bunch of people that are working the steps together, this becomes pretty obvious that we have to stop the whining. The whining has to stop sooner or later because it's never going to change. It's never going to change. Then we get into the amends process. You forget about the character defects. They're in the fourth column of the resentment list, right? And you can make a list of them if you want, but now that you're going to stop the blaming and you realize how powerless you are, they will come and visit you with alarming regularity. You'll be able to see it. You begin to see it. Then in the amends process, you want me to make amends to these people I have resentment for, and I'm not doing that. This makes no sense to me, and it scares the hell out of me. But I do it. Now, when I go to somebody that I don't ever want to see again, and I look them right in the eye, and I say the words that need to be said, when I turn and walk away from that experience, I am changed right then and there, no waiting. This is a cathartic experience. The action of doing this will change me as a person. The experience of doing it, not understanding it intellectually, not agreeing with it, doing it. That's what changes me. Life is experience. If I'm going to grow up, I'm going to have a series of experiences now that I'm not medicated, that I'm going to learn from, because I missed them all before. I didn't learn anything. And this is how this is going to change for me. It's going to be a series of experiences. I'm 8 or 9 years sober. I got escorted off a soccer field full of 9-year-olds for going after the referee. Now, when you're walking off that field, you know you've screwed up. You just couldn't control it, and it came out of your mouth, and you're walking off and go, oh, geez. And then you have to turn around at some point and walk back out there and apologize to everybody, including your own children. You'll quit doing that. That's what happened to me on more than one occasion. When you're at the chain link fence at a Little League game and your fingers are through the chain link fence and you're yelling and the spit's flying out of your mouth, you realize that you once again have overshot the mark. This is how we grow up. This is how teenagers grow up. And we're just a little bit late. So the chance of us doing this and looking good is really slim. Everybody's going to get to wear the clown suit. Now, what's the lesson in the amends process? This is a big one. The third pillar of spiritual condition. Nothing was ever personal. No one was ever doing anything to me. They're just doing what they do, and I happen to be in the blast radius of their behavior. And sometimes you're in my blast radius. Sometimes you're the victim of my behavior. This was true for me a lot. And I'm not doing it to you. You're just the next victim in line. I'm just doing what I do. This is a big one. When these three things come together, I'm powerless. I can't blame anymore. And you begin to realize that nothing was personal. This is the collapse of the egoic structure of who I think I am. My personality is imploding inward on me. There comes a time in this process where you stand there and you say, oh my God, it's me. It was never them. It's me. This is not a happy place. Now, one of the things I heard in that room when I walked into that AA meeting, Alcoholics Anonymous helps us laugh at who we think we are. Not who we are, but who we think we are, right? Self-awareness without humor is depression. And sometimes a depression is the appropriate emotional response. Sometimes we just get to feel bad. You know, people say they suffer from guilt. Usually when I feel guilty, it's because I am. You know, when I feel shame, it's because I've been shameful. It's not a disease. It's the appropriate emotional response, you know. And this certainly happened to me. I just stand there, my God, it's me. I'm an arrogant, pompous, overbearing, aggressive, threatening guy, you know. You know, you out there, some of you may really be an asshole. There's some of you probably are just assholes, but I'll bet you don't want to be. You know, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be I don't want you to be afraid of me. I want to be close to you, and I just don't know how to do it. I don't have that skill set. And when this self-awareness happens, which is the fourth pillar of spiritual condition, is self-awareness as compared to self-obsession, where I develop the skill of being able to watch myself move through life. Now, 1 through 9 is about 10% of the program. It's not the work that they're talking about. This is Sober 101. It's the first semester. It's the work I have to do to develop a message with some depth and weight so that I can begin the real work in Alcoholics Anonymous. The real work is 10, 11, and 12. It's 90% of the program. It's where we live, right? And the 10th step is about making amends in the present moment, where I get it now. I get it now. It's me. I step on your foot. I turn around and say, I'm sorry. I don't have to go down to the club and share at the noon meeting, write 3 pages of inventory, talk to my sponsor and 2 other people, track you down 2 weeks later and say, I'm sorry. I get it. It's me. Okay? I don't like it. Doesn't mean you're innocent, but it's me. I'm responsible for how I feel. I'm responsible for my behavior, not you. It's me. This is called transformation. This is where you can finally see that I am the problem. I've always been the problem. Do I have strengths and weaknesses? Yes. But we're just looking at the immovable parts of the inventory now. What is it that I do? What is it that aspects of my nature that block me from my own fulfillment, my own happiness? And I'm beginning to see that now. The 11th step in meditation, which is not extra credit, it's in the step. My sponsor loves to say, I can't stay sober on 11 and a half steps, right? Meditation is part of this process. In meditation, I can watch myself think. I can sit quietly and focus my mind on the breath coming in and out of my nose, right? So that my ass and my head are in the same place at a certain time during the day, which rarely happens. I'm always thinking about something else. There's a great Zen saying that says, when you're doing the dishes, do the dishes. And we're never doing the dishes, right? We're doing the dishes. We're thinking about something else all the time. I think I'm multitasking, and I'm never present. I'm never right where I am. So in meditation, I focus on the breath. And then the mind, the little ego that thinks it's me, wanders away from the breath because there's nothing for it to do in the present moment. There's never anything wrong in the present moment. So it moves away from the present moment and it goes into the future or in the past. We're going to work on some stuff, right? Now, this isn't malevolent. It's not evil. It's just part of the human condition. Every human being has one of these. You and I are forced to look at it in order to save our own lives. So now we're looking at it, right? So we notice that it has wandered away from the breath and we gently bring it back to the breath. This is a game-changing experience when this happens. And anybody can do this. It's very blue collar. It's not airy-fairy. It's very simple. So evidently, there's something within me that can watch myself think. Evidently, I don't have to go where this egoic mind wants to take me. I can watch it move away and then bring it back. Absolute conclusive proof that who I am is not my thinking mind. There must be something else within me that's other than my thinking mind. I think that's remarkable. When I was 20 years sober, this became really true for me. I started getting really sick with the liver disease. And I had gotten very athletic. I was riding bicycles. I was working out all the time. I became militantly vegetarian. So like the evil biker with the clip-on earring becomes this. That only happens in AA. I don't know where that happens anywhere else. And it all got taken away from me. It all got taken away, and I started meditating with intent. Because what happens around here, we will be reduced to prayer and meditation. Nothing else will work. One more commitment won't work, sponsoring one more guy, speaking at the international convention. Nothing's going to work for me. I will be reduced to prayer and meditation. That's happened to me several times. And at 20 years sober, I started meditating with intent. And what I mean by that is I need help. I need spiritual help. I know I can't change my physical position. I'm not praying that I won't die. I just want peace in my soul. I want to be quiet. I'm 75 years old now. I'm at the tail end of my life, and I don't want to spend my final years in fear and trepidation. I want to be at peace. I want to be comfortable. I want to be with you. I want to be in the present moment because the future is getting shorter, right? So I started meditating with intent. And I had that experience. I had another one of those experiences that we have around here. And it wasn't earth-shattering. The sky didn't open up and God speak to me. I'm an old drug addict, man. That's what I'm looking for. I want a head rush. I want something loud, something big time, something in 3D, and it hasn't been that way for me. They've been very subtle moments of aha moments. Oh, okay. It's been like that. And I had one of those experiences. I've had many. Usually you are involved. Not always, but sometimes you're with me. Those moments, you ever had any moments where you're in exactly the place you're supposed to be, being with exactly who you're supposed to be with, doing exactly what you're doing? Those are spiritual experiences because I would have never chosen those places on my own. I've been brought there. The most spiritual thing that you'll hear in Alcoholics Anonymous is get in the car. Just get in the car. Answer the phone. Don't look and see who it is. If they weren't supposed to be in your life, they wouldn't have called. Have faith that you're being guided, that you're not running the show. Let go. Open the door. Stand by the door and open the door. Just let it happen. Is it inconvenient? Always. It seems like we need to be inconvenienced. That's when the change happens, isn't it? Not when we're comfortable, sitting there watching our favorite rerun of Law and Order. Usually when it happens, the phone rings and it's you. And I have a decision to make. Am I going to pick the television or you? If I pick you, life gets really interesting. Inconvenient, yes, but also life-changing, exciting. When you enter the equation, everything changes. So in meditation, I can watch myself think, and I realize all the ego does is it takes the past and projects it into the future. And we talk about it in the third person. We say things like, my head is out to get me. We make it adversarial because that's who we are. But it's not out to get me. It's just being human. It's just being itself. And I don't need to shut it off. I don't need to kill it or crush it. I can just watch it and realize it's not me. It's part of me, though. It's not some alien creature that's invaded me. I'm just looking at my humanness. And I realize that there's another consciousness within me called the watcher that I can now enhance, and I can work on it and make it a little bit louder, a louder voice in the conference that's going on in my head. And I can develop the skill of the watcher. The final pillar is compassion. And it's what's been missing in me. I can see the character defects and I can even list them, but I don't know what I've never had. And when I started working with you, which is what happened at about a year sober, I start working with you. I'm trying to help you. Now, initially I was motivated by self, but that changed over the years. As you entered in my life, you changed the dynamic of my life. You have always been the teacher. I used to think I was, but you're the teacher. Whenever I ask for help, he sends me you. You come into my life and it changes and disrupts my life in a very positive way. And after a while, I started exercising this compassion muscle and I fell in love with you. Yeah, I fell in love with you. You invited me into your life and I invited you into mine. And man, you came into my life with all your weirdness, all your oddness, all your love, all your compassion, all your devotion, all your anger, all of it came into my life. And it took the focus off of me. And isn't that what this is all about? Literally getting out of self, not more into it to find the true self, stepping outside of it. That's what this is about, is getting out of self, not into it, but out of it. And you're the vehicle for doing that. And the final pillar is compassion. It's what's been missing. And I'll leave you with this thought. I know I've run over. They say here that you got to give it away to keep it. No. You have to give it away to even get it. That's how you get it. That's what you're looking for. That's how you get it, is by giving it away. Thanks for letting me share.